Hello friends. Today we are going to discuss about some facts about the space. Friends, do you agree? We live in a strange solar system. When we look up at the stars, what do you think about it? That we may be not alone. The vastness of it all. There is a lot to wonder about space. The fact is, we don't know all the answers about it. We know it's vast and beautiful, but we are not really sure how vast or how beautiful for that matter. Here I am putting some of the things we do know, however, are downright mind boggling. Few collected informations I want to put here the most amazing facts about the space. So, when you look up at the stars, you can be even more wowed by what you are looking at. You know, neutron stars can spin at a rate of 600 rotations per second. They are really beautiful looking in the sky. Neutron stars are one of the possible evolutionary endpoints of high mass stars. They are born in core collapse, supernova star explosion, and subsequently rotate extremely rapidly as a consequence of their physics. Neutron stars can rotate up to 60 times per second after born. Under special circumstances, this rate can increase to more than 600 times per second. Next is, space is completely silent. Sound waves need a medium to travel through. Since there is no atmosphere in the vacuum of space, the realm between stars will always be eerily silent. That said, worlds with atmospheres and air pressure do allow sounds to travel. Hence, why there is plenty of noise on Earth and likely other planets as well. Next is there is an uncountable number of stars in the known universe. We basically have no idea how many stars there are in the universe. Right now, we use our estimate of how many stars there are in our own galaxy, the Milky Way. We then multiply that number by the best guesstimate of the number of galaxies in the universe. After all, that math, NASA can only confidently say that. Say there are all zillions of uncountable stars. A zillion is any uncountable amount. An Australian National University study put their estimate at 70 sextillion. Put another way, that is 70,000 million, million, and million. Next is about the Apollo. The Apollo astronauts' footprints on the moon will probably stay there for at least 100 million years. Since the moon doesn't have an atmosphere, there is no wind or water to erode or wash away the Apollo astronauts' mark on the moon. That means their footprints, rover prints, spaceship prints, and discarded materials will stay preserved on the moon for a very long time. They won't stay on there forever, though the moon's still a dynamic environment. It's actually being constantly bombarded with micrometeoroids, which means that erosion is still happening on the moon, just very slowly. Next is 99% of our solar system's mass is the sun. Our star, the sun, is so dense that it accounts for a whopping 99% of the mass of our entire solar system. That's what allows it to dominate all of the planets gravitationally. Technically, our Sun is a G type main sequence star, which means that every second it fuses approximately 600 million tons of hydrogen to helium. It also converts about 4 million tons of matter to energy as a byproduct. When the sun dies, it will become a red giant and develop the earth and everything on it. But don't worry, that won't happen for another 5 billion years. Next is more energy from the sun hits earth every hour that the planet uses it in a year. The use of solar energy has increased at a rate of 20% each year for the past 15 years. According to Yale Environment 360, the world added 30% more solar energy capacity in 2017, meaning that 98.9 gigawatts of solar energy was produced that year. Despite seemingly large number, this amount of energy only accounts for 0.7% of the world's annual electricity usage. Next is if two pieces of the same type of metal touch in space, they will bond and be permanently stuck together. Amazing, na? The amazing effect is called cold welding. It happens because the atoms of the individual pieces of metal have no way of knowing that they are different pieces of metal. So the lumps join together. This wouldn't happen on Earth because there is air, water separating those two pieces. The effect has a lot of implications for spacecraft construction and the future of metal based construction in vacuums. Next is the largest asteroid in our solar system is a mammoth piece of space rock named Ceres. The asteroid, which is sometimes known as a dwarf planet, is almost 600 miles in diameter. It's by far the largest in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter and accounts for a whole third of the belt's mass. Ceres' surface area is approximately equal to the land area of India or Argentina. The uncrewed spacecraft Dawn finished up its mission orbiting Ceres in October 2018, helping us totally transform our understanding of the world. Next is one day on Venus is longer than 1 year on Earth. Venus has an extremely slow axis rotation that takes about 243 Earth days to complete one full cycle. Funny enough, it takes Venus even less time in Earth days in order to complete one revolution around the Sun, that is 226 to be exact. Furthermore, the Sun rises every 117 Earth days, which means that the Sun will rise only 2 times during each year, which is also all technically in the same day. Since Venus also rotates clockwise, the Sun will rise in the west and will set in the east. Next is Jupiter's red spot is shrinking. You know Jupiter's famous red spot? These days, it has been said that it is shrinking over the past few decades. The spot on the planet is a giant spinning storm that used to be able to fit about 3 Earths. Now only one Earth can fit inside the spot. Interestingly enough, as the storm is shrinking in width, it's actually growing taller in length. Scientists are still stumped as to why this phenomenon is occurring in the first place, but some theorize that it may have to do with jet streams on Jupiter that have either changed direction or location. Next is one of Saturn's moons has a distinct two-tone coloration. Iapetus, one of Saturn's 62 moons, is actually a pretty unique celestial object. This moon has a very distinct two-tone coloration with one side be much darker than the other. This strange occurrence is not present on any other moons in the solar system. Iapetus' color has to do with its position in relation to the rest of Saturn's moons. It turns out that Iapetus is way outside of Saturn's rings, and because of this, it gets hit with a lot of space debris from objects that might be passing through its orbit, explaining the dark areas according to Forbes. Furthermore, another moon Phoebe, which is completely dark and farther out than Iapetus, revolves clockwise around Saturn and emits a steady stream of particles. Iapetus revolves counterclockwise, meaning that only one side of a Iapetus gets hit with the particles coming off of Phoebe when they revolve past each other. This explains why Iapetus is not fully dark but only partially. Next is the position of the North Star will change over time. Navigation will be weird when Polaris stops being the North Star in about 13,000 years. In case you didn't know, Earth's axis goes through a motion called precession, which means that the planet's axis will change and trace out the shape of a cone, even if it's slightly. When this occurs, it takes around 26,000 years for the axis to trace out a complete cone shape. To add to this, Polaris, the Earth's current North Star, will eventually begin to shift positions as the Earth undergoes precession. In 3000 BC, it's believed that the North Star was the star Thuban, otherwise known as Alpha Draconis. In about 13,000 years, the star Vega will be the new North Star, but in 26,000 years, Polaris will return in its original position as the Earth continues to go through precession. Next is the first person on the moon was Neil Armstrong. The first ever man to step a foot on the moon was Neil Armstrong. It was during the Apollo 11 mission where they're going to attempt to land two men on the moon. Alongside Neil Armstrong was Buzz Aldrin. They first stepped on the moon on 20th July 1969. Neil Armstrong said the famous words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," as he stepped foot on the moon. Next, the first person in space was Yuri Gagarin. It must have been very scary to be the first person in space ever. The first person to go to space was a man called Yuri Gagarin. He was from Russia. He went up into space on 12th April 1961. Yuri circled the Earth for 108 minutes. Next, for a rocket to get into orbit around Earth, it needs to travel 17,600 miles per hour. Have you ever seen a rocket take off to go into space? It has to go really fast. The rocket will travel 17,600 miles per hour to enable it to orbit around the Earth. However, if you wanted to go even further into space, out of Earth's gravity, then you would need to travel even faster, sometimes up to 25,000 miles per hour. Next is you could fit 1.3 million Earths into the Sun. The Sun is huge. In fact, it's so big you could fit 1.3 million planet Earths inside it. Next is space is a very cold place at about minus 270.45 degrees Celsius. Space is assumed as very cold and is around minus 270.45 degrees Celsius. Luckily, space suits are very well insulated to keep the astronauts warm in the cold conditions. They absorb body heat and then, when the body needs warmth, it will release the heat. Clever? Next is the moon reflects light from the sun. During the night, the moon looks really bright. The light is not actually coming from the moon. The moon reflects the light from the sun, which is why we can see it so clearly. Next is, in our solar system, there are 8 planets. In total, there are 8 planets. They are Earth, Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus. Pluto used to be a planet, but it got deemed in 2006 and is now known as a dwarf planet. Next is the longest time an astronaut has spent in space is 437 days. The longest time spent in space is a whole 437 days. That's more than a year. Valery Polyakov holds the record and was up in space from January 94 until March 95. He orbited the Earth 7,000 times and spent his days doing experiments and scientific research. Next is it is completely silent in space. There is no way for sound to travel. Luckily, astronauts can speak using their radios, as the radio waves are still able to travel. That would be a long few months if they couldn't speak. Next is a star is a ball of very hot gases. A star is made up of very hot gases. They are mainly made of hydrogen. The middle of a star is very, very hot and it gets squeezed by the pressure. This pressure then makes the hydrogen turn into helium. It makes the star shine really bright. Did you know the sun is a star? It's just the closest one to Earth, which is why it is so big and hot.